Alright guys, so here's my 2013 Street Glide, and it's a great machine, but it's far from perfect. And I just want to talk to you today about a lot of things that you're going to find out that are wrong about the bike, but I'm also going to tell you ways to fix it and make it better. But I also want to talk to you about what's really good about the bike and things you'll learn about it that are like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I learned things about the bike after I bought it. So let's jump on the bike and talk about it. Alright guys, so before you give me crap for not having on a jacket or gloves, it's 99 degrees in Southern California today, and I'm just going to cruise around this neighborhood and shoot this moto vlog, so I'll be lucky if I break 30 miles an hour. I'm actually wearing shorts too. So I'm going to start with what's bad about this bike. And well, look at these houses, man, that's cool. I don't get over here much. The worst thing about this bike is the front forks. The front forks are awful. They're very spongy. Like when I hit the brakes, see how the front end dives? That's not good. Now this bike is a 2013, so things are probably a little bit softer than when the bike was new, but there are things you can do to make it all better, and it ain't gonna cost you an arm and a leg. You can go with a set of progressive springs, which will make some improvement. If you want to do a really good improvement that avoids fork dive and makes your front end stick better to the road, Progressive also makes a thing called a monotube kit. And it's basically like it changes the entire internals on the forks. I've got a kit sitting in the box at home. I haven't installed them yet, and I'm just going by what I've heard they do, what they claim they do. And but I'm really excited to get that installed on this bike because the forks on this thing really need help. And while we're on the topic of suspension, the shocks on this bike were junk. I've already changed those out. The bike came with air shocks, and they didn't ride very well. If I put Miss Motopilot on the back, I had to add more air, so that was just kind of a hassle. And even she was like, man, this bike feels terrible over bumps. And so I got hooked up with a set of shocks from Russ Wernemont Design, and they're piggyback reservoir shocks. Oh, look at that cool little... God, these houses are nice, man. Wow, what a difference that made on shocks. A really popular upgrade on bikes is to switch out the shocks on these. Now, if you don't want to spend $950 on a pair of shocks, you can go to look at Progressive, and they have shocks for like every budget on there, and any shocks they make that you put on this bike are going to be an improvement, maybe even a huge improvement. Now the difference between this bike and the Road Glide is the fairing. Like the fairing on this bike is good, but the windshield that you get with the bike it sucks. It's terrible. It's about that tall, and you get a lot of wind buffering on your helmet. And you know, a real popular upgrade is to swap that thing out for something taller. I went with National Cycle fairing on this bike, and you can see it's about, I think it's 7.5 inches tall, and it's kind of got this shape to it where it deflects the wind around my helmet. And when I put that on, it made a really big difference in you know, how much wind was bouncing my head around. I literally, before with the stock one, my helmet, my eyes were rattling inside my helmet. It's not good, especially on long rides. You're like, oh my god, it's wearing me out. So you're going to want to change that. Now when you buy a Harley, if you buy a new one, or if you buy one that doesn't have handlebars on it yet, you will despise the stock handlebars. They are the worst bend on the planet. You know, one of the first things everybody does when they get these bikes is that they toss the bars and slap on a different set. Not necessarily always, you know, I have 14-inch ape hangers on this bike, and at 5'10", they're perfect for me, and it's probably the most popular height out there is the 14-inch. I've seen comments from guys that, oh, I went with a 10-inch bar, or I'm 6 foot tall and I hate them. I'm like, yeah, dude, like that's way too low for a guy your size. My buddy, who is he's like 5'8", he just put a set of 14-inch T-bars on his Road Glide, and he's like, dude, these things feel perfect. So I would say 14 gets the vote. Now here's the thing on the brakes. If you're buying a used bike, like I bought this as a 2013, I noticed right away when I test rode it, I was like, wow, the front brakes are garbage on this thing. And I don't just mean like stopping power. Actually, they have decent stopping power, but the rotors, it's got dual rotors in the front, and they gotta be warped, because when I hit the brakes, the bike like does this. It's not consistent. It's like grab. It's like, even at this slow speed, I can feel like a grab. It's awful. You know, a cure for that is you're gonna have to spend some money on new brake rotors and obviously pads. I think you can get by with keeping the stock calipers, which is the device that the braking pads mount into. That's probably not the big issue. So this bike at least needs new rotors, and that's really high on my list of things to do, because like if I get into a situation where I need to brake in an emergency and I've had to do it on this bike, I'm like, oh, this is gnarly. The harder I hit the brakes, the worse it is, obviously. Now let me start talking about what's awesome about this bike, and the first thing I want to talk about is the selection of accessories. Look at that place. Come on, man, that's nice. It's unbelievable how many companies make accessories for these bikes. Now this bike has been essentially the same since 2008 all the way to 2020. I mean, they made some changes, some minor changes, but the bulk of the bike is the same. If you get one of these and you want to modify it, make it your way, which is a really popular thing to do, obviously, sky's the limit, man. There's so many companies I've learned about since owning this bike that I'd heard of the main ones, you know, like the Performance Machine, the Vance and Hines, the big hitters, you know, that have been in the game for 50 years. But there's all these smaller companies like Factory 47 that make really cool crash bars and sissy bars and handlebars. I mean, this is actually the first street bike I've ever owned where the wife asked me to take her for a ride, whether it's, you know, a 3 or 4 hour ride or just a ride to go to dinner. You know, she's got a nice comfortable seat now and a sissy bar to keep her butt in place so she feels, you know, locked into the bike. It's a big deal, you know, it's kind of a game changer. Then you have your cruise control. Wow, nice thing to have, especially on a touring bike for the long ride. The way you use it is you just flip this switch right here, and then with your right hand thumb you got this toggle right here. You push the toggle to the right to activate it, and then once it's activated you just push it left and right to change your speed. It works really good. It just does what you want it to do, and then when you want to release it you just tap your front or back brake and boom. Now this is pretty obvious. Obviously this bike has a radio, and I love the fact that it does have a radio and I don't have to play the music in my helmet. When I bought this bike, the guy didn't tell me anything about it. I had to learn all myself. So if you want to adjust the volume on the radio, you got a little switch right here, little toggle. Now unfortunately the radio on this bike sucks. It's the stock radio. It's AM, FM, and it actually has a CD player, if you can believe that. Who's gonna play CDs? What's up, brother?
Your bike is looking good.
It's
good. Where you headed?
It's dirty. It needs some love. All right, so where was I? That's a really cool neighbor of mine. He's got some bikes, and he's actually an amazing human being. Is a pastor, a local pastor. Anyways, the radio on this thing, yeah, it's pretty much got to be swapped out. Depending on what year you buy, you're probably going to end up swapping out your radio for something else. It's a really common thing to do. What I'm going to do on this bike is I'm actually going to get an entire new interfering nice gloss plaque from a company called Metra, M-E-T-R-A, and it's going to have the double din stereo, like the Sony stack stereo, with all kinds of Bluetooth connectivity and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's the plan with this bike. So the speakers are 6.5 inch, and they're like basically garbage. Those are going to get tossed too. What a lot of people do, you know, obviously I'm talking to the people that are new to the Street Glide or never had one. A lot of you guys that know all this about this bike already, that already have this bike. But you're going to want to change out those speakers to nicer ones, maybe get an amp, and you can put speakers in the lids of your saddlebags. Usually it's a 6x9. But probably the number one thing I enjoy about the radio, because I don't play it a lot when I ride. Every once in a while I do, but a lot of times I want to just relax and listen to the wind. I like it when I can turn the switch right here to the right. When I stop riding and park, turn off the engine, you flip the switch right here to the right, and it's like an auxiliary mode, and you can play your music as you're hanging out. That is really cool when you stop and you can listen to music without a helmet on. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the most obvious thing. That's why they call these things baggers, is the saddlebags. I mean, everybody knows the bike has saddlebags. A lot of people buy these bikes because they have saddlebags. But what you don't really think about is how much you can utilize those saddlebags once you get the bike. Most people think, well, I'm just going to throw some riding gear in there, you know, for colder weather, and kind of like that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that. They make coolers that can go in there, custom fit to go in there. They have organizers that go underneath the lids, which I have here. As you can see, that's where I put my small items like my sunglasses, phone, wallet. But I'm about to get some organizers that go to on the inside, that go against the inner wall of the saddlebag, like really big organizers with a lot of pockets. And I just talked to a company yesterday. They're going to hook me up with those. So I'm going to do a what's in my bags video, because there's just a lot that you can do with these bags that a lot of people don't think about. The bags kind of open up new opportunities to ride these things. You can ride longer, farther, with more comfort. You can put drinks in there. We put a lunch in there. Me and the wife always put lunches in there, and we go up on the hill and we'll just park and eat. When you got bags, suddenly now you're finding new reasons to ride your bike. You know, next thing you know, you're like, hey, I'm gonna run an errand. I'm gonna go down and get some groceries. I'm gonna go to the post office and mail a package. Like, next thing you know, you're using your bike for all kinds of different things that you never used your bike for before. And I have literally packed these bags so much with groceries. You can fit a lot in there, man, believe it or not. Sometimes I get a little overboard and I buy too much, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh man, like, what am I gonna do now? Oh, one time I had to come home with groceries in my lap. And if you got a girlfriend or a wife, they're gonna love the bag. My wife, she loves it that she can now put her purse in there, and if it gets, you know, if she wants to bring a sweater or whatever, if it gets chilly later. So she's got her bag when we ride, and I got mine. Better still be recording. My GoPro, this is actually my third time out on the bike to record this one video, because my GoPro keeps turning off, and I don't know what's going on. I've tested it for an hour and it didn't turn off. But oh boy, as soon as I get on the bike and start recording, it wants to jack with me. Anyways, guys, if you're thinking about getting a road glide or a street glide, you are gonna love this bike. I never hear anybody complaining like, oh man, I screwed up, I got a street glide. I mean, these bikes, they just make your ride life so much better. All right, man. That's it for this episode. You guys all ride safe, keep the rubber side down, and I will catch you in the next video.